the most reason why I have that feeling is because it's a deeply personal record. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a deeply personal. Even like my son is in the video. You know what I mean? Like, it's a record. Like I said, I try to reflect myself, but there are different levels to that reflection. You know what I mean? And this one is just bang on the nose. Like, it's literally myself, my immediate moments of my life right now on the record. You know what I mean? And having people be able to listen to that. You know what I mean?
Hi everyone, welcome to We Plug Good Music TV. My name is Ayo and you're tuning into our brand new show called Behind the Music, where we speak to some of our favorite artists and they take us into a deep dive into their latest single. Today we have got UK rap artist and producer AKS, and we'll be talking about his new single, Parity. Here we go. AKS, welcome to the show. Before we jump into the matter at hand, just a quick check-in. How have you been? How is 2022 so far?
It's all right, man.
Yeah.
Like, things are going well, so I'm happy right now. At this moment in time, this present moment in time, as we sit here right now, I'm happy.
That is good. So we want to talk about your latest single, Parity. I'm just going to jump right in to the questions that I have here for you now. But before that, just so that us and the people that are going to be listening and are going to be watching, if you were to give us a backstory of who AKS is and how we got here.
AKS, 3 letters. I am a rapper and a producer straight out of South London, Deptford, relatively close by to where we are right now. And yeah, like, you know, I've been making music for as long as I can remember, man. As a child, like, I grew up in a household that was heavily musical. My dad played the saxophone, he plays the piano. Sounds of Dizzy Gillespie in my house, you know what I mean? And that kind of thing. Sounds of John Coltrane, Fela and Nicola Kuti. These are the sounds that were the soundscapes of my childhood kind of thing, you know what I mean? Mixed with like political struggle and stuff, being introduced to grime or early forms of grime and garage originally, you know, so the likes of So Solid, etc. And then, you know, moving into like making hip hop, you know what I mean? So I remember getting a CD for one of my bedrooms, Nas's Illmatic, you know what I mean? Like playing that, falling in love with hip hop, and then the rest is kind of
so if you can go back, like, what was the very first track that you actually recorded?
I don't even remember. I don't remember the first track that I recorded, but I remember the first time that I thought things were, that this was for me, was I remember tacking onto like a studio session from a group. They were called Django 85, I think, at the time. And I was just in the studio at that time. I was working with the group that I was with at the time, Midas Touch. And we were just kind of mucking around, you know, in the studio. And I remember taking about 10 minutes out of the session. So it was a Django 85 session, taking 10 minutes out of the session and saying, oh, can I record something that I'm working on myself? And there was a song that I had called Maybe. This is like MySpace days, you know what I mean? There was a song that I had called Maybe that I just, you know, it was like a slow mellow tune that I just wanted to like kind of try my tack at. And yeah, I took 10 minutes out of the studio session, recorded that track, put that on MySpace, and then a lot of people started to like hit me up after that. So that's the first time that I thought, raw, actually I'm good at this, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. But even before that, I was doing the live set thing, like, you know, with garage, you know what I mean? That kind of thing, right? So I was in a crew called Live Wire Crew. Even before that, we would go radio, we would do sets, you know, some of the songs that we were making during those sets would get, you know, passed around to different areas on tape and all that kind of stuff. So like, this is way back, you know what I mean? Like radio days, then was there, call up, private caller, whatever, you know what I mean? Give me 10 rings and then I'll reload the tune, that kind of thing, you get me? So yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of groups that you were in. I know you as being part of Midas Touch. Like, can you just briefly, just, you know, touch on the role that that group played or has played in in who you are or where you are now?
Yeah, I mean that's like the launching ground. Like my brothers, all of us grew up in Deptford. Myself, Jada Exodus, Phoenix the Icefire. So we all grew up in Deptford, stone's throw away from each other. I went to school with Jada Exodus. Phoenix was like a neighbor, like literally, and we all had this like camaraderie and friendship and just love for music. So we kind of just like got together and said, we can do the rap thing. I think I was about 18 at that point in time. We can do this hip hop thing. Let's make a group, call ourselves Midas Touch, make a couple of records. You know what I mean? And yeah, things kind of snowballed from there. The open mic circuit, we would go on, just like perform as best we could. The songs that we had, link up with certain producers, Nutty P, Self-Taught Beats, you know what I mean, and just kind of make records that are, things that we thought were gonna stand the test of time and stuff, you know what I mean, and threw ourselves into that. That's how I learned to perform. That's how I learned how to rap really in a very friendly competition type of way, you know what I mean? Yeah, like and those are my brothers till today, you know what I mean? So yeah.
So let's jump into the main meat. We're talking about Parity, and on my notes here, I have described it as an introspective song about the pressures and aspirations of being a black father. Yeah. But in your own words, what is this song about?
Parity, it is what you've just said, essentially. It's a song about being a black father, the struggles that are associated with being a black father, just a father in general, and anyway, but like specifically, it's like a smoke signal to black fathers specifically, because there are certain other challenges that we kind of face, right? Like, you know what I mean, in terms of how we deal with the world and how we deal with our kids as well. So essentially the song's championing the belief that, we are here to kind of move the needle for our kids, you know what I mean? To put our kids in a better position than we started with, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of individuals that are working towards that, trying their best for their children, and sometimes not even getting it 100% right, you know what I mean? There are challenges that are associated with that, and the song's celebrating those challenges, exploring those challenges, and also recognizing the generation that came before us and the challenges that they face as well, innit? There's parity in that as well, right? Like, you know what I mean? So it's not just what we're doing for our kids, it's what we are to our parents, you know what I mean? What our parents done for us, that kind of thing.
So like in UK rap, I very rarely hear songs about parenthood, right? So
it's not like I celebrated.
So what inspired this song, man? Like, yeah.
I've never been the type of person to follow trend. You know what I mean? Like with regard to like music and the kind of themes that are out there, I've always really wanted to challenge myself to make music that's in a reflection of my actual day-to-day life, on a daily basis, and the challenges that I face on an emotional level. You know what I mean? So for this song, that's the same principle, man. Having become a parent, going through the challenges of what that is, to what impact that had on my life, you know what I mean, as it stood. Obviously, like my son was someone that was planned, you know what I mean, we wanted to have him, we took that step, but I don't think I realized how much it would impact my day to day, you know what I mean, really, like, there's no, like, in like The Matrix, to quote it, because it's my favorite film, but yeah, The Matrix, to quote it, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path, right? Like, and that was like how I felt in that situation. Like having my son here, blessing that he is, it made me realize that like I've got responsibility now, you know what I mean? Like, and now I've got to go for it, kind of thing. So that's essentially what inspired it. Having that conversation with my mates who also had children, where they were at with their parents, where they were at with their kids, the things that they were trying to do, you know what I mean? The conflict that arose because of that, you know what I mean? And them walking into a space where they can celebrate themselves as being fathers, you know what I mean? And mothers as well, you know what I mean? I just wanted to be able to do that.
Okay, so like, so are these thoughts that have kind of accumulated all the time, or like I don't know how you write songs, right?
Yeah.
So it's a case of, okay, I want to write a song about this, so think on it, and and then speak to peers, and and then get the information I may need, or is it just that in your life these are the thoughts that are there, and then that leads you to make the song?
Definitely the second of what you just said, right? So it's like I'm never, at the moment anyway, never actively trying to write something. You know what I mean? I can have a barrage of conversations and thoughts that are happening on my day-to-day basis. You know what I mean? Just us having this conversation now may trigger something in terms of me writing something later on. You know what I mean? So I kind of sit in emotion. It's almost like method acting a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I kind of sit in an emotion for a period of time. And that's definitely the case here. Like I definitely had a feeling that, I wanted to write something about parenthood. You know what I mean? This is, what was pressing on my heart kind of thing. And, the project that this is from, that, it's plain as day, Departures and Arrival, that's the overarching theme. That's there. Like, what I mean? The transition between generations, if that makes sense, right? Like, and, my father's generation, our generation, and my children's generation, you know what I mean? My child's generation. So yeah, I was just sitting in that feeling, because that's what I was trying to write about. And yeah, the concepts kind of came to me. I remember listening to Sims's Woman, that track, hearing the cymbals, the drum break that was in there, thinking, oh, I want something that's like hi-hats and cymbals like that, you know what I mean? And then thinking, okay, let me go and try to find something that kind of fits like that, find a groove that fits like that. And yeah, the beginnings of Parity came out of that, really. I was sitting in the emotion, done this drum break, and then yeah, we just kind of stumbled forward from there,
So I've got here, which you have also touched on. This track looks at our hopes and dreams and how they compare with our own parents' hopes and dreams for us, right? But what are some of those similarities and or differences that you see from your parents to you, or from you to your son?
I think that a universal concept is that we move the needle for our kids, right? Like, the amount that we have, I'm not just talking about accumulation of things, you know what I mean? I'm talking about the experience that we have as people and stuff. We want to put our kids in a position, and the knowledge that we have as well. We want to put ourselves in a position where they can draw on that, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. So put them in a position that's further than the position that we started with, if that makes sense, right? So I think that that's a universal theme that is what people would want, you know what I mean? Our parents, us, and I'm sure when our kids are, of parenting age, they'll probably feel like that as well. But then obviously the world is the world, right? And obviously we live in a Western society, isn't it? As what, quote unquote, the minority, right? So because of that, I'm sure there are challenges that come as part and parcel of that, you know what I mean? When you're dealing with things like racism and stuff like that, which, I'm sure our parents dealt with, you know what I mean? There were riots at that point in time when they came over, or if they're first generation African, or even the Windrush generation. And then there's the same kind of riots that happen in our lifetime, you know what I mean? With the killing of Mark Duggan and that kind of thing, right? So there are vast similarities in terms of the things that we face and challenges that we face as parents when our kids grow up inside this, society, you know what I mean? And, the concerns that we have for their well-being, if that makes sense, right? So that's where I'll say that the similarities kind of lie. But then there's also differences, like I said, I grew up in relative poverty, as an example, right? I grew up on the council estate in Deptford, round the corner here, you know what I mean? And, the things that I've, seen, or the struggles that I've seen as a child, I wouldn't want my kid to feel that, and probably, we're not even in a situation where that would be the case, right? So the needle has moved because of the things that my parent did, you know what I mean? And the needle has moved because of the things that I've done, you know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? So there are similarities in terms of what we face and the challenges that we face, but there's also differences as well, right?
I am not yet a parents, but I find that a lot of us who may not have had the best childhood, you know, in terms of resources per se, we always want to make sure that that before we bring a child into this world, we are kind of able to you know to take care of them or to provide for them, right? You know, I saw a news story last week saying more and more people are not getting kids until past 30, right? But how much of that drove your choice as to when you had a kid?
I'm not sure if it was conscious, bro. Like, you know what I mean? I don't like, you know, like I said, my son was planned, so like, you know, I can't say that it wasn't a factor. It definitely was, but I'm not sure if it was a conscious thing of me saying I'm not gonna have a kid until this point in time till I've got this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I ever approached it like that. But I do know that there became a point where I started to feel a lot more comfortable about the idea of having a kid. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? You know, so there were many years where I was like, I'm not on that. You know what I mean? And then, you know, there was a point where I was like, all right, cool, this is what it is. You know what I mean? I'm married. You know, like I'm relatively comfortable in terms of where we are. Let's do this. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And that's kind of how the conversation came about. And yeah, you know, now my son's here, innit? So, you know what I mean?
Nice. There is a lyric in the song where you say, or where you ask the question, do you really want a white picket fence with a guardian when your son is the only black kid in the class? Can you expand on where you're going with that, or where you are with that line?
Like I said, okay, I grew up in a council estate, right? So when we was growing up, my idea about success, quote unquote, was like a white picket fence to the garden, like being able to move through an area where there was a large garden, you know what I mean? And we could run around, and that's like my idea of like, okay, like we've made it now. But, you know, the realities of that, you know, obviously I was thinking about that like through a child's eyes, you know what I mean? The realities of like achieving that comes with certain things, right? So like moving to an area potentially where you're even more of the minority, as an example, right? So you're even more of a minority, you stick out like as an individual. So one of the questions that I ask is, which one of us would say, okay, it will be okay for us to move to a place with a white picket fence and a garden, you know what I mean? Have a bigger garden, and the idea about what our life is like has improved. However, we're dealing with racism on a day-to-day basis as an artifact of being in, you know, that minority in that place, right? Like, is that a fair trade? You know what I mean? You know, you've made a decision that you think is gonna improve the lives of yourself and the lives of your children. You know what I mean? However, if your child is sitting in the class, he's the only black kid, and then he's getting like lambasted because of the fact that he's the only black kid, is that something that you're all right with? Does that sit right with you? Or have you put your child in a situation that you wouldn't really want him to be in? You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And that's the question. There's a lot of things that are juxtapositions or double-edged swords. You know what I mean? Where as a parent, you kind of need to navigate that a little bit, you know, and you're navigating that on behalf of your children. And sometimes you don't get that answer 100% right, because there is no right answer, right? Like, you know, it's about you trying to do the best that you can do, and know that, you know, maybe that's not going to be all right in the long run, but trying to manage that as best you can. You know what I mean? So I hope that answers that.
Yeah. Now, I have read you talk about this film called Black Sheep.
Yeah.
In particular reference to this main question about, you know, how do we find the balance between giving our children a better life versus making sure that we are not putting them in a worse place?
Yeah, like That film, yeah, like I watched that film when it came out, so it's about 2018, I think. I think that's so it's a short, it's a Oscar-nominated short about the life of a guy called Cornelius Walker, I believe. And what happens in that situation is that he lives in an estate in Peckham, right across the road from where Damilola Taylor was killed, right? And in the aftermath of Damilola's death or murder, his family decide that, you know, the area is it's rough, you know what I mean, and they want to like put themselves in a better situation. So they decide to move somewhere outside of London, you know, white picket fence in the garden, you know what I mean? That kind of thing, you know what I mean? But they're trying to get away from something, you know what I mean? Which is, you know, the kind of knife crime and all of that kind of stuff that was rampant in London at that time, you know what I mean? So they've made this choice to go to this area, and what happens is that, you know, what they don't know is that the estate that they move on to, well, I say estate, but you know, the suburban estate that they move on to is run by you know, a gang of skinhead racists, you know what I mean? And that has dire effects on Cornelius's life. He grows up and actually joins the gang, you know what I mean? So he perpetuates like racial motivated attacks on individuals that look like him, you know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? Yeah. And it's like when you look at, and that's not to say that everybody's life is going to be like that, you know what I mean? But when you look at that as an example of what could potentially happen, is that, do you knowingly make that decision to take your kid in that situation? It's like you can't win on either side. Like I said before, double-edged sword. You have, on one side you've got, you know, the ends, you know what I mean, and everything that comes with that, right, you know what I mean, and the potential that your kid could, you know, join a gang and all of those kind of things. You run away from that, but then face the same kind of things. Your kid joins a gang, it's just a different gang, right? It looks different. They behave different. It's the same kind of like issues that you're presenting with. In between that, you thought that you improved your life, you know what I mean? But really, have you? You know what I mean? And it's just about balancing that. It's a struggle, right? You don't know. You don't know what your choices are gonna really yield. You know what I mean? And that's the important thing about that line.
Fair enough. Let's go into talking about more of the creative process for this song. So I haven't always known you as a producer, but you produced this song. So what was that process like, and what has it been like wearing that hat for yourself?
It's been different, bro. It's different, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny you say that you don't know me as a producer, but like, I've been a producer for a long time, you know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? So for as long as you've known me, I've produced. I just haven't put that at the forefront and actually said, oh yeah, I produced this record or whatever. So I think part of it was me wanting to prove to myself that actually I could like step into that space and be a producer in my own right, you know what I mean? And you know, and in front of the world, not just, you know, behind closed doors, if that makes sense, right? All of the records that anybody's ever heard from me, I've been involved in the process, regardless of whether like I produced the record or not. I've been involved in the process and taking it from where it originally started to where it was going to be, and I wanted that to be kind of known, if that makes sense, right? Like, you know, in terms of these records that I'm currently, you know, working. So yeah, it's been different, you know. It's good that people kind of like recognize me for it now, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just hope that long continues, kind of thing.
So I guess the thing for me, or the question would then be, what changed, or what has changed in the sense of if you had your hands in all of those previous tracks versus this one
is like I was at the reins, you know what I mean? Like it was my show. I did the majority of it. So obviously, like, I worked a lot with some musicians, Charlie Stacey, Adrian Remedy, Benjamin Rout, like on the bass of this record. And yeah, like, you know, we worked together in terms of like making that happen, but I was the shot caller, if that makes sense, right? Like I put together the initial track demo, like I booked the artists, the musicians, I got them in to kind of play the parts, all of those kind of things, give them the direction in terms of what I was trying to do. essentially all of the job that's associated with a producer. There was nobody else there telling me do this or do that or sharing their expertise. It was just like my show. So
I guess, so how do you flesh that out? Now we know we have been in lockdown. What was that whole process like in terms of bringing those different parts, those different musicians? Like, how did you get that all to work?
Just patience, bro. Like, we never did everything all together as well. Like, at the same time, it's like, I might put down one part, get that locked in, call somebody else, you know what I mean, and say, send over the files digitally, that kind of thing. It's just having the patience to step through it on a step-by-step basis. Lockdown really put it in a place where people were at home and they weren't doing anything, so it meant that they were more accessible than they were before, which made sense. Even me making this record kind of was born out of the fact that we was in lockdown. You know what I mean? I had a long period of time before that where I was producing, but I wasn't really like releasing anything. You know what I mean? So like being in lockdown meant that, okay, like I've got more disposable cash as an artifact of that. Maybe I can like put together a release and run with that. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So yeah, that's the basis.
So you talked about how you worked with a few musicians on this track, and I have always known your tracks to be very rich in musicality, very rich in texture. I would think that is an important element to your sound. Why is it important?
That's a question, bro. Like I'm like literally whenever I'm in the studio, in terms of like what I'm trying to create, I'm just trying to make something that's a reflection of me, like, you know what I mean? And like I said, I grew up in a very jazz oriented household, jazz mixed with Afrobeat and soul, essentially, right? So I'm essentially trying to mimic, in some sense of the word, the soundscape of my childhood. What's my safe kind of space? Does that make sense, right? Like that's what I love. You know what I mean? I love the musicality of the record, which is why I'm so hands on with everything when it comes to the production side of things. Anyway, like I just love music. You know what I mean? The creation of it, and specifically music that lives in that soul oriented space. You know what I mean? Jazz meets soul. Meets hip hop. You know what I mean? Elements of grime, you know what I mean? All of the things that make the melting pot of music, which is black orientated but situated in London. That kind of, you know what I mean? Situated in London, UK, even the US as well, right? Like that kind of sound is really where I kind of sit and reside. And being able to reflect that honestly is what I want to be able to do. So that's the reason why it's so important to me, man. You know what I mean? Passion, isn't it?
For sure. So in a piece that you wrote for us before, you say that you are surprised that Parity even exists in this space where people can listen to it. Can you speak to us or speak to that and share why you had or why you have that feeling?
Because the most reason why I have that feeling is because it's a deeply personal record. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a deeply personal. Even like my son is in the video. You know what I mean? Like it's a record. Like I said, I try to reflect myself. But there are different levels to that reflection, you know what I mean? And this one is just bang on the nose. Like it's literally myself, my immediate moments of my life right now on the record. You know what I mean? And having people be able to listen to that, you know what I mean, is weird in one sense. Obviously, like I've released it, so it's not like something that I'm apprehensive about. But at the same time, it's like, okay, cool, people get a peek at my real life, you know what I mean, and my real son, and you know what I mean, all of that kind of stuff, and what our relationship is like. They get a peek at what my relationship is like with my dad, as an example, through the lyrics of the record, and that is deeply personal, right? Like having that live in a space where the public can just consume that is something that's new for me. Like, you know what I mean, like being so open and honest.
So, was there ever a point where, as you were writing this song and as you were putting it together, you thought, perhaps I shouldn't put it out?
Yeah. Yeah. I wrestled with it a bit, you know what I mean? I didn't know whether, like, I didn't even know if people were going to take to it as well. That's another, you know what I mean, another side of it, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to be very open and honest here. Like, is this something that people are going to resonate with, you know what I mean, kind of thing. And, you know, it was a bit of a gamble, you know what I mean? I definitely was apprehensive about putting my son in a public space as well, you know what I mean? Like, before this record, I did a job of not having him on socials and that kind of thing, you know what I mean? You know, but, you know, I spoke to his mum. We had a conversation about whether he should be involved or not. And yeah, she was kind of happy for him to be involved. And I think one of my mates as well, I had a conversation with one of my mates, my business partner, actually, previous business partner, Nee. He had, and he just basically said to me that it's important to make sure that my son is involved in the process. Because obviously I'm writing this record about our relationship, right? And he was like, oh, you know, it's important to make sure that your son's part of the process, right? Like that he knows, from a first-hand experience, that you can start with something, you want to make a record, you know what I mean, or make a video, and see the whole process. And my son's only 3, right? But see the whole process of daddy working on something, and daddy's doing this thing, and you're part of it too, you know what I mean? And then have it be released and celebrated, and him see, you know, the dividends of that as well. Like, is an important lesson to kind of learn, right? And when we're talking about like putting our kids in better situations, I thought that's true to the theme of the song. So that's why, you know what I mean, he's so heavily involved. Yes, there was apprehensions, but you know what I mean, I'm happy that we did it the way that we did it.
Definitely, man, definitely. You have touched on this already, but these next few questions are things that you have already touched on here, but like so you mentioned the video for the track. So not only did you produce the track, you also shot and directed the video.
With a little help from my wife, I must think, otherwise I'll get in trouble.
A family thing, of course. So okay, how did the video for this track come about?
Okay, so we decided that we was going to go on a staycation because of COVID, right? Like, you know, we couldn't get out of the country and stuff, right? So we decided that we was going to go on a staycation to Bournemouth. I had the camera and I'd been like shooting some stuff behind the scenes anyway, like, you know, just, you know, to kind of get my head around making videos and stuff like that. It's an interest of mine, right? And then literally was out in Bournemouth and I'd written the song. I knew that the song was going to be released relatively soon, and I thought I would use that opportunity to kind of like make the video, like direct the video. So, you know, during our staycation, we just like shot it, you know. Couple of days on the beach, like running around with the sun, you know what I mean? And the artifact of it is there. Much help from my missus, you know what I mean?
That's good. So like, so I know that, you know, you have already touched on how and why you thought it best to get your son involved in both the track and in the video. There was a line that you said where you say about the track talks about wanting to provide opportunities for your son. How did that play into you getting him involved in the track and in the video as well?
I mean, like, my son's only 3, right? So like everything is like at the moment trying to teach him something. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, right? Like, and some of those lessons maybe he won't grasp until a couple of years down the line, or even that, you know, in his adulthood and stuff. You know what I mean? You know, when he looks back at the video and he's like, "Oh, Rod, Dad, like you did this video, you wrote this song." Like, it will speak to something about how I feel about our relationship, even now at his age at 3 years old, you know what I mean? And the challenges that I kind of face as an individual and stuff like that, and give him a better understanding about who it is that I am now, you know what I mean? And hopefully that reflects itself in our relationship at that point in time as well. Like I said, it's just about teachable moments, man. I wanted him to learn the beginning, the middle, and the end of working on something. And yeah, he's 3 years old. Maybe he didn't grasp that 100%, but I think in due course he'll get it. You know what I mean?
So does he get a co-write on the song? Does he get points on the publishing?
He doesn't get the points.
What,
man.
bro?
He don't get the points, but you know what I mean? He's gonna get the points after I'm gone. Okay. He's gonna get the point. Yeah, no, but it was good to really get him involved, man. And you know, like it was a lovely process. Especially like that at the beginning of the record, like he's the kid saying 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I mean? Like, so it's nice to have him record. That was like difficult as well. as well. Trying to get him to just say 1, 2, 3, 4 on the mic was so hard. You know what I mean? I think he ended up crying at the end of the session. But yeah, you know, I mean, it was good to get him involved anyway.
Nice. So we had briefly touched on how you were able to get all the musicians that worked on the track, you know, through this period of COVID and stuff. But like, how has the rest of putting out a song in the middle of lockdown been, like, you know, in terms of the marketing and the promoting, like, you know, what are the things that you have had to do? What are the challenges that you have had to face? You know, because, you know, I would think that the way that you have had to push this song has been very different to you know, to what you had to do before.
I think, well, promo's always difficult, regardless of promo's a bit of a game of resources, isn't it? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, right? Like if you've got like a lot of money or a machine behind you or whatever, then it becomes a little bit easier because you use money to grease the wheel, right? Like, and have the necessary conversations that need to occur, and then you can move things forward a little bit. But when you're like, no, grassroots or you're independent, it's a little bit more difficult. You really need to like think about like who it is that you're contacting, roll your sleeves up and actually do the contacting yourself, which is something that I've had to do on this run, and just really just get stuck in and make sure that, you know, you talk to individuals, you know what I mean, you kind of connect with them on a personal level, make sure that you know, you're telling them what the story or the narrative behind what you're releasing is, and just really like making sure that you communicate that effectively. Really, that's really what I've been involved with. So everything from the, you know, the artwork to pushing it out to radio, like, you know, yourself helping out with the PR of the record. You know what I mean? Like we've been really trying to like go to the block with this.
So are there things that you wish you are able to do with this track, like live, or you know?
I would, man. Like we'll see what happens, man. You know what I mean? Because like the live thing, as you know, like that is a massive part of what AKS, like who AKS is, right? You know, the live, you know, facet of my artistry is important. So I'm waiting for the time where everything's open up again, so that we can go back to doing live shows and me presenting some of the new material to a live audience. That would be really brilliant. And I think that's the main thing that I feel like is missing currently, right, from the campaign. But I can sit here and just be like, blood, this thing has done much more than I thought it was going to do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, we're one extra right now, like playlisted as track of the week. Did I think that was going to be the case when I opened? You know, I definitely would have shot for it, but I didn't think it was going to happen. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So you know, like the fact that I can sit here and say, these are the things that have happened. It's been played here, blah blah blah. You know what I mean? That's a big deal. You know what I mean?
So let us speak to that a bit more. So it is at the moment the track of the week on BBC One Extra. It's been played on Six Music, on Radio 1 as well, and it has been getting a lot of support. Now, one, just give us like a general feel of what the overall reception has been, and how does it feel for you to have done this track, deeply personal track, about a thing that not many in the UK rap space talk about, and for it to be getting this much love? How does that make you feel?
Bro, like it's everything in it. Like there are long periods of time where, you know, man would release records or whatever and it not really hit, like, you know what I mean, in the same kind of capacity, right? So like to go and make a track that is like super personal, like this is probably my most personal track I've ever written, you know what I mean, and ever released, you know what I mean? So to make a track that is super personal like this, and then walk into a space where, you know, like I said, it's played on BBC Radio 1, like that's not something that I would have envisioned, you know what I mean, occurring for an artist like me, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So it's brilliant that that's the case, you know, and it speaks a bit of a turning of the tide, if that makes sense, right? Like in terms of like my artistry as an individual, but also the scene in general, right? Like the types of things that we're open to listening to seems to be changing, you know what I mean? You know, when I talk about us, I mean like the mass, you know what I mean, audience. Like it seems to be changing. It seems like we're able to connect with people a lot more now. The stations are seemingly willing to, you know, take a gamble a little bit on newer artists that are speaking a different narrative than the usual, if that makes sense. And look, don't get me wrong, there's a space for everything, you know what I mean, if that makes sense, but it's nice to see a little bit of balance that is occurring at this present moment of time. And the rise of the alternative like hip hop scene and then alternative R&B scene as well, like, you know what I mean, seeing that kind of like walk its way into the forefront of the main stream, like is dope, man. Like, and I live for that. Like it's a beautiful thing.
And so you also you know, touched on how a lot of the promo for this track you have had to get in touch with people to, you know, to push the track yourself. Be that
that's
playlist.
not different though, but
you know, but you know, I know that there are a lot of artists that are subscribed to us. If there are a few tips that you can give to other artists that are doing the work themselves, what would that be, or what would those tips be?
The main thing I would say is to get your stuff in order, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you're sending something out to people and you want to essentially remove any reason for them to be able to say no, that's just like a technicality, if that makes sense, right? So let's say you're trying to pitch something to radio as an example, and you've got like a dirty version but you don't have a clean edit, right? That's a problem, right? And sometimes people are not going to come back to you and say, oh, I like the song, but like I need a clean edit. They're just going to say no, you know what I mean, at the gate. So my thing is making sure that everything is in order before I'm pressing go on trying to pitch it to people. And that's one of the main things. Make sure you've got your PR, like, you know, press release in order. Make sure you've got like a Dropbox folder or a Google Drive folder that's got your clean edit, your press images, those kind of things. And that's what you really should be kind of sending out to people, man. Like, I think once you've got that in order and you're touching base with people on a personal level, you know what I mean? Not just like a blanket email that goes out to everybody in an impersonal way. On a personal level, actually having, you know, some kind of a relationship with the individuals that you're contacting and building that relationship, I think that you'll be in a good space, you know what I mean? And I'm a testament to that. Like, you know, a lot of the relationships that I've had and the wins that I've had have come out of relationships that have been 5, 6, 7 years long, you know what I mean? Where maybe it was a no at you know 7 years ago, but now it's coming good and it's a yes now, right? You know what I mean? So it's a case of like building on those relationships, deepening the relationship in a real way, you know what I mean? And then just like sticking with it, man. Like, you know, it might not be tomorrow, but like it will surely come.
For sure. So you mentioned this at the very start. So you are coming up to your third EP, As Plain as Day, Departures and Arrivals, for which Parity is the lead.
Yeah.
So what can we expect from this EP?
More deep conversation, man. Like literally, like the EP itself, I'm really like exploring what it is to be an individual that's spread across generations, if that makes sense, right? Like, so, you know, thinking about things through different lenses, through the lens of my son, through the lens of my dad, you know what I mean, or my mum. And yeah, just kind of exploring that a little bit, man. So like, what I want people to take away from the new record is like, yeah, that difference in generations, man. And also just have a good snapshot of what it is to be in my life, you know what I mean, kind of thing. I want it to just be like a snapshot in time of who it is that I am now, that I've become a parent, and you know, I can see things from the other side of the fence, you know what I mean? Like that's the premise, man. But yeah, more deep conversation will come out of it.
So like, in terms of the actual titles of your 3 EPs, so I know that from the very start you have had the theme of modes of transport, right? So am I safe to say that you have had As Plain as Day as a title for
a long time? Yeah, but I have had As Plain as Day as a title for a long time, but the meaning's kind of like changed. You know what I mean? Like I always wanted, like you have to kind of like find camaraderie in your environment in terms of like what it is that you want to say, right? Like, you know what I mean, kind of thing. Like, you know, there needs to be a resonance point. So like the meaning of As Plain as Day at first was supposed to be a case of like, you know, things being apparent. You know what I mean? The whole modes of transport theme was associated with like the arc of my career, right? You know what I mean? And that's what I wanted to be, to a point of like, you know, we're going to go with planes for the next one. I'm flying now, right? And you know, God's been so good that it kind of feels like that's happening for me now, right? Which is great. But like on a real ground level, like the meaning of the record has changed because of the life that I've lived up until this point, right? And it just so happens that now that I'm making the record, I've become a parent. So the Departures and Arrivals kind of speaks to that. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, and where I am in my life now. So you can listen to all of my records and say that's a snapshot of AKS as he was then. That's a snapshot of AKS as he was. You know what I mean? Was then, and this will be the same. You know what I mean? Like, it's just I'm in a different space, man.
Yeah. So you had the titles for your first 3 EPs way back then.
Yeah.
Do you have the titles for the next 3?
Not the next 3, but I have a title because after this is going to be an EP project. It may turn into an album, we don't know. Like, yeah. Well, anyway, it's like, for now it's an EP project, yeah. So yeah, like, you know, I suppose and then I want to do like the album, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's high time. I've been in this game for a long period of time, like over 10 years. I think it's high time that I had an album project. So I've got the album there. Like, you know, Motherland is the title for the album, and yeah, we'll see how things go.
Like, you can kind of set me straight in terms of artists can tend to be a bit precious in terms of what they want to term as an album versus what they don't. Yeah. So like,
I'm not so precious. Personally, I'm not so precious, right?
Okay.
I've called everything that I've released so far an EP, but they've got more than the EP's worth of songs on there, right? So some people refer to them as albums, and I'm perfectly happy with that. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. But like, in terms of like, when I talk about album, I think of, you know, studio debut album, you know what I mean? Something that the artist has said this is the album, like, I haven't done that yet. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So, you know.
But in terms of the actual putting the project together,
yeah,
is there is there going to be a difference in how you...
In my process?
Yeah.
No. I can't see that happening.
Yeah.
Just because of by virtue of the fact that, like, you know, the way in which I've made music up until this point in time has been the way in which you make albums. You know what I mean? I've approached all of them in that fashion. They've all been, you know, original songs. They've all been, like, you know, highly musical. And yeah, that's what I want to do more. I just think with the album that I'm going to be working on at that point in time, it's going to be more songs. You know what I mean? Than the 8 that I've done on the last 2 EPs and whatever I've done on this one. You know what I mean? It will be more.
So I guess so the 2 songs that we have heard from Aspender's Day are self-produced.
Yeah.
Is the whole EP self-produced?
Not the whole EP. It's not all self-produced. I'm working with Nutty. I'm working with Self-Taught Beats again. You know what I mean? I'm working with them drums as well. Yeah. Like we'll see what like kind of comes out of those collaborations. We've got a couple of things in the can. Yeah. We'll see what's gonna come out.
Those are 3 producers that you have worked with for a very long time.
Yep.
Is there scope to work with other people?
Like, bro, I'm down. Listen, I'm down to work with everybody. You know what I mean? Because I love the scene, right? Like, and you know, it's about just finding the time to make it happen. I love the scene. You know, I would hope that these 2 singles have put me in a space where people understand who it is that I am. If you know, because I've had long periods of time where I've just kind of been idle, right? So, and I get that. You know, people think, oh yeah, you're not moving, you're not active, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So now that man is, like, you know what I mean, I hope it puts me in a space where people reckon with what it is that I'm doing, and yeah, maybe they want to get into the studio and we can work on something, man. It will be lovely to do that, man. Like, you know, I've got a good history of collaborating with people in a live capacity, so let's do that on a record, you know what I mean. It'll be nice.
So final bits of things to kind of like touch on. Some people say to move forward, you have to go back. So for people that are only hearing about you now for the first time, and if they want to go back into your discography to kind of know more, what 3 songs are you gonna say are quintessential AKS, and why are you picking these 3 songs?
Bro, you messed me up with this question. Everybody loves their own catalog, right? Like, and obviously, like, I asked. It's really hard because all of my songs are like my babies, isn't it, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I asked some of my mates about like what they thought was quintessential AKS kind of stuff. So some of the tracks that came up were The Bus Stop, you know what I mean, which is a record that I wrote when my mother was had passed away. Basically, I wrote the first half before she passed away, and then, you know, a tragedy happened. She went to Nigeria, got involved in a car accident, and then next thing I know, I'm getting the call that she's no longer with us. So I wrote a second half of it in the wake of her passing. At that time, I think I was up for like the cordless show, people's vote kind of thing, you know. So I won that people's vote, you know, in the aftermath of her passing. I remember having a conversation with my sister saying, "Oh yeah, I don't want to do this no more. I need to like focus on the family and stuff." And she's saying, "No, you gotta go and do this for mum." And then, you know, The Bus Stop was the song that I performed on the Cordless show, you know, as the prize of winning the thing, right? So that song has a real starting point or landmark in my musical career, you know what I mean? And for a lot of people, that's where they were introduced to me. So I think that's got to be number 1. House Called Home is another one. Some people refer to that as a classic. You know what I mean? That kind of, you know, again, look, the video is already even on now. House Called Home, yeah, so it's about basically the living in the Western society that we live in, you know, here in the UK, and, you know, adopting everything that is about being British, you know what I mean, to a certain extent, but then also feeling that you don't fit, if that makes sense, right? So we live in this house, We call it home, but is it really? You know what I mean? That's the kind of premise that we're talking on there. And I don't know what to I would say parity. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Parity. You know what I mean? But no, okay. Setting parity aside, there is a record called "Truth Be Told" on the Bust Up EP. And it's funny I've said all three like Bust Up records, right? But it's because it's the beginning of everything, right?
Yeah.
There's a record on the Bust Up EP called "Truth Be Told," and I can't even really speak about what that's about. It's just about telling the truth. But that is a song that everybody kind of, if I'm doing live, if anybody's seen me live, "Truth Be Told" is the one that goes off. So yeah, "Truth Be Told" is like one of my favorite records that I've ever written. It's one of my favorite records that I ever perform. If you see me live, like, you'll know that I love that record. You know what I mean?
For sure. So it was "Truth Be Told," "House Called Home," and the Bust Up. AKS, it's been fun. It's been great. Thank you for
having me,
to
man. I
speak to
appreciate
us about this new single. Before we let you go, can you just tell the people where they can find you, all the socials?
All the socials, AKS Online. That's all you need to know. AKS Online, all the socials, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. And if you go to www.aksmusic.co.uk, you can find everything about me too.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah?
Nice one.
Bro.
Awesome.
Nice one, man. Thank you.